Welcome everyone to the OPC UA Inside Out webinar series. My name is Anant Taparia. I have the privilege of taking care of marketing here at Uttunga Technologies. All of us are likely sitting in the comfort of our homes. With everything that is unfolding outside with COVID, I sincerely thank you for making this time to attend the webinar. We have participants from about 11 countries and multiple time zones. So thank you very much. In the first part of this Inside Out webinar series, our focus is on introducing the technical aspects and the essential elements of OPC UA. Before we get started, I will take a couple of minutes to introduce Uttunga, especially for the guests who we have the privilege of hosting for the first time. Next slide, please, Chhatrapati. Thank you. We are an industrial software and hardware services company, partnering closely with leading OEMs in the industrial world to build products and solutions from concept all the way through the life cycle of the product. With over 500 engineers, we offer services in application development, embedded services, IoT, and verification and validation for OEMs and end industries in process, factory, power domains. Next slide, please. The bedrock of our foundation of who we are as a company is actually industrial connectivity, as shown here in the association with the various consortiums. We enable data acquisition from the field level and make it available upwards to the various consumers of data in the classical ISA 95 pyramid. Our association with OPC, the standard, and OPC Foundation also as the organization is part of our commitment to industrial connectivity. With that, I would like to introduce our speakers for today. Chhatrapati. Chhatrapati is the Director of Embedded here at Uttunga, a very active member in the OPC Foundation Working Group. He has contributed in creating use cases for OPC PubSub on small footprint devices. Chhatrapati has a solid understanding of OPC UN devices, companion specification, having executed several projects with OPC UA Nano Profile, servers with high performance demands, servers with heterogeneous communication requirements for protocols like HART IP, Ethernet IP, IEC 61850, BACnet, and others. He has a fantastic knowledge on field devices, NAMU standard, and semantic ID, and having worked with various open source and commercially available OPC UA stacks. The other speaker for today is Tilak. Tilak is a software architect here, a very seasoned one at Uttunga, also an active member and a contributor to OPC Foundation PubSub Working Group. He's also an active member of OPC US Specification Group in the FDT Consortium, the other very popular consortium on field device integration. With a strong knowledge on DDS and IIoT and layers on top of OPC, with applications like MQTT, EMQB technology, Tilak brings a variety of skills around OPC. Tilak is also responsible for having developed and certified Uttunga's OPC UA server. Tilak is also a specialist in troubleshooting OPC UA and DA, the classic OPC connectivity and integration issues. Just a few final housekeeping points before I move on to have the speaker take over. This webinar is for 60 minutes. We will keep the last 10 minutes for questions from you. Please send in your questions using the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen to one or either of the panelists. The slides of this presentation and a link to the video of this webinar will be shared with everyone post the webinar. Before I hand over to Tilak, our first speaker, I quickly wanted to do a quick poll. Just a second. If you could please choose your answers here. Okay, so we have a variety of answers here, and quite a few people here seem to have an active interest in OPC UA with projects they are actively looking at. So with that, I would like to hand over to Tilak to take us through this initial introduction on the first part of our webinar.
Thanks, Anand. So, hi everyone. Thanks for joining Otunga OPCUA webinar series. So, let's get started with today's agenda. So, in this session, we are going to cover introduction on OPC UA, which gives the brief idea why OPC is needed and how OPC has been originated, and also where this OPC technology has been used in other platforms like RAMI 4.0, Namur Open Architecture, and Industrial Internet Reference Architecture, IIRA. So followed by, we'll be having discussion on OPC based concepts, which will be more on information model and base services that are available in OPC UA service. And then followed by OPC UA transports, where how the client server architecture will communicate, and how it will be communicating using PubSub model as well. So followed by OPC UA security involved in client server, OPC UA and PubSub model. Then OPC UA scalability and OPC UA discovery, where the utilities that are available in OPC UA. So before we understand what is OPC, let's understand the problem faced by the operator or the end user. Many vendors manufactures the devices, sensors, or the PLCs and exposes the data in different protocol format or the languages like Modbus, HART, Profinet, and so on, and sometimes proprietary protocol as well. It is quite difficult for an end user to install an individual start software and start monitoring the data. And also it was very challenging to integrate these data to DCS or the HMI applications. Hence, some of the leading vendors came together and decided to have an open platform connectivity called OPC to have an uniform and standard communication without losing data in a secure manner. And hence, OPC implementation started with a client server architecture, as you can see in the right side of the image, where all the protocol drivers are integrated in the OPC server and exposes data in one normalized format. On the other end, it can be one or more OPC client. So this solved most of the end user problem like cost, maintenance. So that is no upgradation is required in the DCS or the HMI software, and easily integrated to other components. So initially it started with a client server architecture with Microsoft COM-based technology, where the if you have OPC client and the server uses a DCOM configuration, where though this industrial proven solution, and most of these plants or site, these COM-based OPC client server, it has been used. Still, there are some limitation with this implementation. So one is the platform dependency. As it uses COM, DCOM technology, it works only on Windows platform. And it has a limited security. Yes, it encrypts the data using MD5 algorithms, but still it has limited security when you are exchanging the data from one computer to another computer. And it also doesn't work across the network. So if client is running in some other network and server is running, so it requires the same username, password, and the same domain to establish the connection. And it also doesn't support the complex data types like an hierarchical data types or the user defined data types. It has a very basic data types like int, float, or double. So to overcome the limitation of the OPC classic versions, that is the COM based application, the foundation came up with OPC UA feature. So the definition it started with the year 2003, 2006, and the verification and implementation started in the year 2008. And the final OPC foundation and the 62501, they released this specification at the year 2012. And recently they have released the specification for OPC PubSub in the year 2018. So this OPC UA, it also in a client server based architecture, whereas it uses the port to establish the connection, where it completely get rid of COM-DCOM technology. So it become a platform independence where it can work even in any platform. It can work in Linux as well as Windows, where the client can run in Windows application and server can run in Linux application, Linux operating system, and vice versa. And it can establish the connection. So it has some built-in security features, which we are going to see in further slides. And it has a feature, have a generic object model, where you can build the information model to see the information over OPC nodes. And it has an extensible type system, scalability through profiles, where you have a nano profile, embedded profile, and as well as standard profile. So based on the features, you can develop the OPC UA server application. And it has also the specification has been built in such a way that the classic OPC server, whatever it has been built as an COM-DCOM, it can be migrated easily to OPC UA version. So the OPC UA is also being used in other platforms like reference architecture model, Industry 4.0, what we call it as RAMI 4.0. So it generates a platform for standardizing of Industry 4.0 to have an uniform structure and uniform wording. So it defines three-dimension model where one axis is the factory, which defines products, field devices, control devices, and so on. And the second axis is the product life cycle, which covers the development, production, maintenance, usage. And the third axis speaks about the layers or the architecture, where it covers the assets, integration, communication, and so on. So here the OPC UA is used in the communication layer as a standard to have an standard communication and the secure connectivity. Similarly, OPC UA is being used in Namur open architecture platform as well, where it is used to establish the direct link from field level to the cloud. You can see in the diagram that you have a control process, a core process control that needs to be transferred the data to an central monitoring system for analysts, historian. And using this OPC UA, you can able to easily exchange the information with security. So the OPC UA also is being used in IIRA. So it has been proposed by IIC, Industrial Internet Consortium, where the IoT core components and technologies are addressed here. And the IIRA explains the IoT system architecture and value proposition from the business as well as the technical perspective. So here also OPC UA is being used as a connectivity standard for transferring data from one layer to another. So next concept in on OPC UA based concepts on information model and the base services. OPC UA information centric layer architecture. It has different layers. So the base layer is an OPC UA meta model, which has the basic rules for exposing the information with OPC UA. So whatever the information OPC UA exposes, it uses using nodes. So each node has its own property or the basic rules called node ID, browse name, display name. So these rules has been defined in the OPC UA meta model. And followed by you have a generic model, object model, and extendable type system, which is an where you can define your nodes and it has an inbuilt nodes and the type definition as you can define in the specification. So based on that, we can define the nodes. So there are certain built-in models for data access. So when it's a data access profile, it is used for monitoring the data and to perform read and write the data, where you can define the nodes as per the needs. And you have an alarm conditions. So based on the conditions triggers, the alarms will get generated. And you have an historian data access. Based on the start time and the end time, you can able to get the historian data. And you'll have a programs to execute some methods or the APIs internally. And you have a device description. So generally when I say node, so everything in OPC UA address space is a node which has a basic properties called node ID, node class, browse name, display name, and description. And you can see there are 8 node classes defined under base node. You have an object, variable, method, object type, reference type, variable type, data type, and view type. So when you say variable, it has some default properties, value, data type, value rank, and it can be defined as an variable type. So let me take one example called object type. Say that I have an analog measurement type. This is an inbuilt type defined in the OPC UA model. And so when I say an analog measurement type, it has some default properties like high level, low level, low level. And with the measurement, it has instrument range, EU range, and the engineering units. So when I define an certain variables like temperature, pressure, which is of type, analog measurement, which means that it has some default properties like high level, low level, and the instrument range as well as units. So the end user who has an HMI application can easily build the user interface based on these type definition, which means that if I have an analog measurement type, so then which means that for those nodes, it will have certain properties like instrument range, level, and so on, so that the values can be mapped easily. So then there's some companion models. So different domain experts, they have defined the information schema as per their specification, and those information needs to be exchanged in an OPC UA. So the OPC Foundation collaborates with those organizations and the domain experts, and OPC UA defines how those information needs to be exposed over OPC UA, and the domain experts defines what information needs to be exposed. So there are domain experts like PLC Open, FDI, FTT, BACnet, and so on, like MT Connect. So MT Connect exposes the data in an HTTP XML schema format. So the OPC Foundation has defined the MT Connect information model for based per the MT Connect schema. So next is the service protocol independent, as we have an OPC UA. So it has some set of service sets has been predefined between the OPC UA client and the server. So some service sets like secure channel service sets to establish the secure connection between the client and the server. Then the session service sets. So this service set has been maintained in the server end to identify how many clients are get connected in the OPC server. Then followed by the node management service set. So the node management is used to add or delete the node in the OPC UA information model. Then the attribute service set used to perform read or write operation or to monitor the data. So the method service set is used to invoke certain APIs to perform certain action in the OPC UA server. And monitor service set and the subscription service set is used to create subscription and monitor the data. So next is on OPC UA transport. Chhatrapati will take over on this.
Hello everyone, I'm Chhatrapati. We'll talk about OPC UA transports for both client server and as well as pub sub models. So all the services that are being exchanged, all the messages that are being exchanged between OPC UA client and server, they will be encoded as per a certain standard and they will be transported as per certain standard. So there are different types of encodings available. So and in combination with a specific transport mechanism for that specific encoding. So from that way, the first one is a binary encoding with TCP transport. So so this is a mandatory encoding and transport combination that should be there for all the OPC UA servers. And then there is an XML encoding with HTTP or HTTPS transport. This is deprecated. And then there is a hybrid optional pair where binary encoding and the transport, instead of plain TCP, it will be transported over a TLS secure connection. So, and when it comes to how these clients and servers communicate with each other, so each client establishes a secure session with the server, and all the messages which are requests and response format will be exchanged on top of the secure session that has been established. So at the core of it, it is just a TCP connection on top of which some of the TCP messages are being exchanged, which are encoded as per OPC UA binary format. So here, if you look at a server where suppose if 10 different clients or even 100 different clients are connected, so that server must maintain all these sessions with all these clients. It needs to maintain all the hundreds of TCP connections and their corresponding session context, and based on which whatever the request comes from one of these clients, it should process that and respond back within the timing constraints of OPC UA server. So because of this reason, the resource demand on these servers in terms of network bandwidth, in terms of CPU utilization, in terms of memory, these are very high. And on top of that, that to keep the session alive, at least the client must be subscribing to one of the variables, something like a simple variable like server status or something, and that way the session will keep alive even though the client is not actively sending requests and responses. And so the entire mechanism works on polling based. So the server will keep noticing the data changes, and client, whenever it needs, it will poll for the data change, and then at that point of time server sends the changed values of those particular variables for which the subscription has been created. So it is polling based, that is CPU intensive, and then because of all these sessions that are always alive even though there are no actively message exchanges are happening, So because of that, it is memory intensive as well as CPU intensive and bandwidth intensive, because the same data it may be sending to multiple clients if these multiple clients are requesting or subscribing to a certain same variable. So there is a different model, which is a publisher subscriber model, which has been standardized, and the specification has been released in 2018. So the major thought process behind this publisher subscriber specification is to avoid and is to work around all the different disadvantages that are observed in the client server model. So in this case, the messages are exchanged over UDP or MQTT or AMQP messages, and UDP. In the UDP case, there will not be any broker in between. The Ethernet network itself works like a broker, and whereas in the case of AMQP and MQTT, there will be some broker in between. So what happens is whatever the data that needs to be sent to one of the client, so the client actually subscribes for that data, and the server will be publishing that data to the AMQP or MQTT broker, or it will be broadcasting those packets over UDP. So there is no active TCP connection which is persisting always between the client and server. And then the packet. So if there are several clients which are looking to receive the same piece of data, still that piece of data from the publisher goes to the broker only once, and the broker actually handles the distribution of that packet to all the multiple subscribers who have subscribed for that particular data. So in a way, all the resource intensive tasks that are being handled by the OPC US server gets shifted to the broker. So that way the server itself becomes very much lightweight with respect to when compared against the client server model. By adding TSN support at the physical layer with PubSub over UDP, it supports near real-time message exchange like any other industrial automation protocols. And however, there are a few constraints even with this model. The first thing is client cannot decide what data it needs. Only server publishes saying that I have these data sets and these data sets is what I am going to publish. So client must subscribe to one of those data sets. Client cannot pick and choose what data it needs. And still, for configuring the publisher and subscriber modules of the client and server, you would need a standard OPC client server functionality still exist alongside the PubSub model. So as I already explained, so there will be several publishers and several subscribers in the entire network, and there can be one or multiple brokers. So the publisher defines the data set that it is going to publish, and it will keep publishing to broker, and multiple subscribers excuse me, will connect to this broker and specify for what data sets these subscribers are interested to create a subscription. So when these subscribers create the subscription for specific data sets, from that moment onwards, it becomes broker's responsibility to transmit all such data sets to the subscribers. So the publisher will be sending a single piece of data to the broker, and the broker picks up that piece of data and transmits to all the subscribers who have subscribed for that piece of data. So, like I already explained, the PubSub specification was released in 2018. It is part 14. So here you can see part by part what are all the different areas that the entire OPC UA specification covers. So part 1 is basic concepts, part 2 is security model, part 3 is the address based model, and part 4 is different types of service sets that are defined and how to use them. And part 5 is information model, and how you can come up with your own information model by extending predefined data types, objects, and interfaces. And then part 6 is service mappings. Part 7 is about different profiles and facets. So profiles and facets allows you to design your own OPC UA server with specific facets and specific features specific to your requirements. For example, if you are trying to implement an OPC UA server on a very memory constrained devices, you can pick and choose a few services which are very critical for your device to have, and based on that you can create your own combination of a few facets and a very base profile such as nano profile. And then part 8 talks about data access. Part 9 is about alarms and conditions and how to create those, how to use those, what is the behavior of these alarms and conditions. And part 10 different programs, and part 11 is about historical access. So part 12 is about discovery. This is majorly a utility specification based. So when there are different clients and servers that are there in the network, how would any client will know what are the different servers available in the network, and whether it has permission to connect to a specific server or not, whether the specific server supports an encoding type which the client understands or not. So all these different aspects are covered under discovery. And then the aggregates is about how data from multiple OPC servers can be aggregated, and so a bigger topology where elements of the topology is again are OPC servers and clients, and how to handle such cases. And part 14 is about PubSub models. So here the PubSub model is somewhat extension to the existing client server model. So for the PubSub model, an information model has been created by the OPC Foundation as part of the specification, and how to configure the publisher and how to configure the subscriber. For doing that, what are all the different methods, different variables, and different data sets, metadata sets are all required. Those are defined, and also as part of a prototype working group, these specifications has been implemented and tried and tested. So PubSub model is only an extension of existing OPC UA server, where you can fulfill a use case of exchanging messages of small size at a very rapid time intervals. So so there are different protocols. So this is UADP encoding over UDP, that is for within the network from use case perspective, and as well as AMQP and MQTT. These are for more cloud related and IIoT perspective, where the messages can be exchanged through a broker in between. compared to AMQP and MQTT, the message cycle times are much faster when we use UADP encoding over UDP, and when it is combined with TSN, it is real time. So here you can see how the data flows in a PubSub model. So whatever the information model that is available with an OPC UA server, from that specific variables are arranged together to form a data set, and then that data set will be encoded in a UA binary format or JSON format, and it is being transmitted by the network message writer. And when the packet goes to the into the network, on the other side, when the packet is received by the subscriber, so that specific data set, variable set will be there with the subscriber, and the values are mapped to that to know the values of each of these variables which are part of this particular data set. So in a client server model, client picks to create a subscription by choosing specific set of variables, whereas in PubSub model, server itself creates those data sets and client just has to live with those data sets. It doesn't have a choice to pick any of the variables. So overall, when you look at the communication framework involving OPC UA, so there are different elements: OPC UA client, OPC UA publisher, subscriber modules, as well as OPC UA servers can coexist in the entire topology, where local and very local or as well as a very slow phase data exchange is required, which is not time critical. Still, OPC UA client server can be used, and OPC UA client server has to be used for configuring the publishers and subscribers. And the publishers and subscribers themselves can be used to transmit data through a broker to the cloud, or cyclic data at a very fast rate on UADP encoded packets via the local Ethernet. So the cyclic data becomes deterministic once the TSN has been implemented at the physical layer, and the OPC UA specification takes advantage of the existing TSN network. So for security, I request Tilak to take over.
Yes. So we will see how the security has been involved in OPC UA in both client server communication as well as in OPC UA PubSub. So generally it uses X509 certificate to exchange certificate between the client and the server. So whenever the client tries to connect the server, the certificate will be transferred, the public certificate will be transferred to the server end. The server checks whether the certificate is available in the trusted list. If not, it will be copied to the rejected folder. So it's up to an server end user who has to manually copy those certificate to an server trusted path. So then the client can able to establish the connection with the server. The same procedure needs to be followed in the client end as well, where the server certificate has to be moved from rejected folder to an trusted folder path of the client location, and then the client can client and the server will get trusted each other, and they will start communicating each other. So generally they use PK and asymmetric algorithms to exchange the session keys, and these session keys are used for communication with symmetric algorithms. So these algorithms has been built internally in the OPC communication stack. So the session keys are frequently rotated. So the objective of this security in the client server model is to have the authentication of applications, where only when you exchange the certificate between the client and the server, then only you are able to establish the connection for the secure communication. Then you have an authentication of users, where the client can connect the server based on the username and password credentials. So though you have an valid user who are able to establish the connection with the server, the nodes can be filtered based on the user roles. So the authorization of each node can be handled based on the user roles. And it also has an auditing relevant operation, where the number of clients which does the operations, so those operations, it can be logged by the OPC US server, so that you can audit which client connected and what operation has been done. So as the number of clients gets connected more, the high resource availability will be increased. The performance of the server may slow down. So still we can restrict it by making the availability of the server by the number of clients can connect this server. By default, it will be 100 servers, so that, okay, so 100 clients can connect to a server. Anything above 100, it may not connect. So that still it's a configurable by the OPC US server. So security in case of PubSub is, it has a separate security key service. The service will be running in a separate location, where the publisher and the subscriber will register to that security key service and get the keys from that SKS, that is called security key service. So using those keys, the session keys must be shared between the publisher and the subscribers. So keys are managed by the security groups. Messages are sent in the context of security group. The key distribution is done with OPC client server security, authentication and authorization during the access to the security group at key server. So that once the keys has been exchanged, so when the subscriber receives the multiple messages from the middleware, so it checks the key whether it has received the valid message from the middleware. If it is something a junk message, it can be ignored by the subscriber. So next is on OPC UA scalability. I'll be handovering this to Chhatrapati.
Okay, so there are different profiles defined by OPC UA specification: nano, micro, embedded, and standard profile. So for each profile, what are the different facets that the server should support, and what are the different features that should support, and what should be different capabilities? For example, how many parallel active sessions the server should support, at least to confirm for a specific profile. So basically, any implementation, any OPC UA server implementation can pick any one of these profile, and on top of that, you can add any of the other available facets which meets your requirement. So for example, if you want to have a very small footprint device, you would choose a nano profile. But you want on top of the nano profile, you need at least security to be enabled. Then you can implement the security policies plus nano profile. So that would be your customized profile for your specific device. So the model is quite flexible. So you can pick any profile, and on top of that, you can choose to add any of the different facets. And when you go for conformance certification, so you define what are all the different facets that are supported by your device, and then the certification center tests whether all the listed facets are working properly or not, and based on that you will get your device certified. So when end users look at your product and they see that your OPC product is certified, they won't worry about much of any interoperability issues or basic connectivity issues or in terms of reliability. So depending on the profile, your device get tested for up to 3 to 5 days, and in some cases if you have much more vast sets of facets, the testing goes even beyond 5 days. And the testing is really thorough and very robust process. So that gives your customers very confident so that they can buy your devices without any second thoughts. So this is a link to OPC website where you can see all the different facets and different profiles for your device to say that it supports a specific profile. What are all the minimum requirements that it must implement? So all such information you can find at this link. And the last is about OPC discovery. So okay, so you have your OPC server device, and your customer bought it, and or you bought as part of your project, you bought some OPC devices, or you have installed some OPC servers in your network. So now, how does the different clients that are there in the network knows what are all the different OPC servers running in the network and what are their capabilities and where are they running? How do the client connects to a specific server? So that is where the discovery comes into picture. There are 3 different ways of OPC discovery: a local discovery server, and then the local discovery server with multicast extensions, and then the global discovery server. So local discovery server is where there will be a discovery server running in the same machine on the local host itself, where you are running your OPC servers. So this LDS will be running on a specific defined port 4840, and any OPC client can directly connect to the local host 4840 and send the request to give the list of servers that are there in the system. So all the OPC servers that are running in that particular system would be registering themselves with the local discovery server as soon as they are up and running. So when the client requests for the list, the LDS sends the response with all the list of servers that are running. And then from that moment onwards, client takes over and it picks one of the servers and it connects, and it asks the server what are all the different capabilities that it has and what are all the different endpoints, different security policies that those endpoints support. And based on that, it chooses whatever the matching endpoint, and using that it connects to the OPC server. So a lot of this process is same for the rest of the two things also. The only difference that makes is how does the list of servers come to the client. So only from that perspective, the next two methods will differ from LDS. And here, so this is LDS with multicast extensions. So here, the network infrastructure itself takes advantage of MDNS. So where you don't need a dedicated DNS server or service to find the different LDSs that are running in the same network. So each of the each of the LDS that is running in the network will have this multicast extension, and whenever any server registers with the LDS using that multicast extension, it transmits the list out. So when the OPC clients also transmit the service request into the network using the same multicast extension, it gets response from all these response from the network infrastructure itself, because all the different DNS requests and their responses and what is the address of which domain name, these things are cached in the network, and those responses comes back to the clients. So once the client have this information, from that point onwards, it is again same as LDS. It picks the specific server address, and then it connects and gets list of endpoints and connects. So there is no centralized infrastructure required for the multicast extensions to work, and the major limitation is it only works in the local subnet. It doesn't work across subnets, or it doesn't work in a global perspective. So the third method is to have a centralized global discovery server. So where all the different OPC servers or local discovery servers will send their list of servers to the global discovery server using the register server requests. And then all the different clients that are running will connect to this particular global discovery server, and they will send find servers request. And in response to the find server request, they will find all the list of servers that are registered with the global discovery server. So based on the list of global discovery server responses, the clients will directly connect to the specific OPC server. So global discovery server in a way is a full-fledged OPC server. It is just that its information model has list of registered OPC servers that are running. So only from that aspect it is different. Otherwise, it is a full-fledged OPC server. So that concludes the slides, whatever we wanted to share in the limited time we have for today. We'd like to, we'll try to answer some of the questions that has been asked throughout the session. So, is tunneler required for OPC communication across firewall? This is Vijay Kulkarni. So,
I would like to answer for this question.
Yeah, yes.
So yeah, tunneler is not required for OPC UA communication. So tunneler is required only for OPC classic version, which uses for DCOM connection.
So tunneler is specific to only OPC UA classic, OPC UA DA. So for UA, this is not a requirement at all. There is no tunneler required. How security of data is taken care. So as part of the security Yeah, please go ahead, Tilak.
Yeah, so as part of security, OPC UA has inbuilt algorithms like basic 128 RS15, basic 256 algorithms with exchange of certificate. It uses the sign and encrypt between the client and the server communication.
Will broker exist in PubSub plus TSN? If so, should broker be a TSN node? So in PubSub plus TSN network, the combination is about UDP and UADP. I don't think there is any broker related to TSN. What happens to the data if the client server communication breaks in OPC UA? Is it hold lost data? Yeah, Tilak, go ahead.
Yes, the OPC UA will be keep collecting data from the sensors or the devices, and it will be holding the last data. So it's up to the OPC UA implementation. So when the client subscribes to a particular tag to an OPC UA server, so generally you have a queue size. So the data, whatever it is collecting before the publishing interval is occurred, so it will publish all the data. However, when the communication has been lost, it will go out of memory. So it will hold only the last data.
So beyond that, if anything needs to be saved, there is a historical data access where the OPC UA server keeps storing the data in a database in the backend, and that can be retrieved at a later point of time by sending the historical data access related client requests. So to add to what where Tilak has stopped. Okay, next one. From client example, subscribed 10 parameters. So when few parameters among these 10 change in device, then server will send back all 10 values to the client, or only changed parameters with their values. Tilak, are you there?
Yeah, so if there is a change in the value in the device, the server will send all the 10 values. So if there is only 5 values got changed in the device, so only 5 values will be shared to an OPC UA client.
So this we are talking about client server subscription model, right, Tilak?
Yes, so in this case, only changed value will be exchanged.
Chhatrapati Tilak, with the time running out, we might have to cut short the Q&A right now. What will definitely do is there are quite a few unanswered questions. We will answer.
We can answer these with email.
Correct.
Yep.
Absolutely. So just before we start wrapping up, a quick one poll question, and then I will run through the remaining webinars in this Inside Out OPC UA series. So request you to take a few seconds to answer the next question coming up on your screen. Few more seconds. Okay, we have the results, and seems like quite a few people are in the early stages of exploring OPC UA, and a decent percentage look at OPC UA as a big part of their future roadmap. So these are areas where we can definitely support and be a big help. we'll definitely get in touch with you, and you are more than welcome to also approach us with the areas that you would like to get support on. So before I wrap up, thank you everyone, and thank you to panelists for participating in this webinar. To all the attendees, I hope your time was worth it and you walk out with valuable new information. I will quickly share on the upcoming webinars in this OPC UA Inside Out webinar series. The series of webinars are following a logical progression if you go by the ISA 95 pyramid. After we've covered the technical introduction today, setting the foundation of the series, the next one really starts at the level 0, the field devices and the embedded low footprint devices, which is on May 14th. The one after that on May 28th covers the role of OPC UA in edge devices, which is a growing layer in the automation pyramid, one that is definitely playing a key role in actually flattening the pyramid. The third one after here is the one on OPC tunneler, which is a little bit of a detour to cover the integration of OPC DA and UA products. With the huge install base of OPC classic products, tunnelers will continue to play a key role in years to come. The one after the next one, on the fourth one in the series, is OPC UA with cloud aspects and IIoT. And the last one in the series, we cover challenges on OPC, challenges on connectivity in brownfield projects, and the importance of implementing OPC UA ground up in greenfield projects. We will of course reach you via LinkedIn and email with registration links for these webinars. I request you to please block your calendars. And if you want us to cover some specific topics that has been missed out, please feel free to email us and let us know, and we will surely try to bring those in. I hope to see you all on May 14th in the next webinar on embedded and constrained devices. We are done for today. I really thank you everyone once again for being such great participants and attendees. Request you all to stay safe, stay indoors. Thank you very much.